All right, I've got a little Excel exercise here that I think covers a lot of topics, and you are welcome to use as a demonstration for your own teaching purposes, or maybe you'll learn some things in this too. So I've got the basic instructions right here. What you'll have the students do, or yourself, is simulate a fair coin toss in Excel 20 times. So by fair, I mean you're equally as likely to get a heads or a tails. And I'm just going to say that we'll use heads. So if you get more heads than tails out of 20 rounds, then you're the winner. If you get more tails than heads, then you lost, and then it's a tie if you get 10 heads, 10 tails. All right, so you're going to do that 200 times, so 200 rounds. So 200 rounds times 20 tosses each. That's a lot of coin flipping. This is one nice thing about doing this in Excel versus trying to simulate this yourself. And I'm going to say, let's say that 10 bucks are wagered for each round. So I want you to calculate, or your students, how much you've won and lost in total, and then calculate how much money was exchanged in total. So maybe one round you won 10, but another round you lost 10. That means that you break even, but you've also exchanged $20, right? You had 10 come in and 10 go out. So do all those things, and I've got some ideas in my demo notes to help students if they don't quite know how to start. You're welcome to start them off on this template that I have here and give them some nudges as to what kind of functions might be useful for something like this. Since we are really using random numbers, right? We can translate a head or tail into a 0 or a 1, and then from there, building on conditional logic based on whether you won or lost the round, we can start to model all of these scenarios. So I'm going to walk through the solutions now here. So again, we've got our input assumption up here, $10 a round. So I'm going to start over here. I came up with this nice little square, right? And what we want to do is just fill all these out. So, whoops, not that far. The way we want to do this, and not that far either, the way we want to do this is for all these 200 rounds, we want to just toss 20 times, right? And I want to find out, do I have heads or tails? So the way I'm going to do that is with rand between. And rand between is going to give us a number, right? So if I do equals, okay, we get a 0 or a 1. All right, so we're equally likely to get a 0 or a 1. And again, I could go to formulas, and if I hit my little calculator here, I can calculate now and get a different number each time. But you know what? I really want a heads or tails, not a 0 or a 1. So all I need to do is just translate or convert that into a character. So the way I'm going to do that is with an if statement. And if I get a 0, I'm going to call this a tail. And if not, I'm going to call it a head. And now what I can do is just do that a bunch of times. And let's drag that down. So let me go ahead and just drag this down a little bit and make sure that we can see this stuff. I believe I can hit this to wrap. Okay. And then let's just make that a little bigger. Okay, so we've got our rand betweens. We've turned those into heads and tails. So now all I need to do is just calculate all this up, right? So in this case, looks like I have, well, I don't really know how many heads or tails. I'm going to use conditional logic to count those up. Conditional aggregation, really. So in this case, if I wanted to count the number of heads, do count if. We would need to select our range. So again, that's going to be that. And I want to know if it was a heads this time. So let's do that. And then it's going to be the same thing here. I'll just start the formula from scratch, actually count if. And if I select that range and make that a tail, okay. So now I need to decide whether I won or lost that round. And again, our rules were if I had more heads than tails, that means I won. So basically what we need to do is if heads is greater than tails, it's going to be a win. Then my second, so we're going to have to nest an if statement here because my second condition is if I got fewer heads and tails, that means that I lost. So I will do that here. And that makes it a loss. If neither of those are true, i.e. if we got the same number, that's going to make it a tie. So let's do that. And in this case, it looks like we won. So what we want to do is, so if our win is really a win, then we should get $10. And then if it was a loss, then we should get minus $10. And then finally, our last option would be nothing, and that's a tie, and that's nothing. All right, the last one is the money exchange. So again, I want to count up or be able to count up how much money changed hands. So it doesn't matter if I won it or lost it, it's still an exchange. We can do an absolute value here, so that's kind of cool. ABS function here, I'm going to open that, and again, you can see each time I'm doing stuff to the workbook, these numbers keep changing. So I could go up here to formulas, F9 is our keyboard shortcut, and I could just keep calculating that, and you can see all these numbers are changing, all these numbers are changing. And now let's go ahead and just drag this down. So we do 200 rounds of this. All right, so let's make sure these are visible. I can make sure this is wrapped, and then let's just make these a little bigger. So now what I want to do is summarize this information. And I've got a template over here. So what we want to do is just count these up. We can do that using COUNTIF. So if I do a COUNTIF, that's going to be our template. Let's go back there. And if we wanted to count the number of wins versus the number of losses, we would use this range. I'm going to hold down that reference there, and this time it's a win. So I want to calculate that, and now we can just fill in the blanks here. So this time we want to count up the losses. We want to count up the ties. And this should equal to 200. Yes, it does. All right, good. Okay, so now let's just calculate a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to use a SUMIF here, and we're going to count up, or add up really, the amount of money won. So I'll go back to my worksheet here. This time we want to find the amount of money won, and I'm just going to get the winning values here, so that would be greater than 0. I can do the same thing here. This time we just want the less than 0. That'll be the losses. So I'm going to sum these up. And then our total money exchange, again, that goes back to that absolute value field. If I go back here, I'll do that. And let's may as well hold that reference down. Great. Okay, so what we're going to see here is that I'll go back and do some recalculating. We're always going to get 200 rounds played, right? That's not going to change. However, the number of wins versus losses versus ties, and subsequently the amount of money we win, lose, and exchange is going to be different each time. So this exercise I really like because it does teach a lot of different things in Excel. If I go back to my worksheet here, you need to think of a good way to design this worksheet to account for a lot of different kinds of calculations, right? So you're easily able to sum and aggregate across many rounds and many tosses. You're going to use a combination of random numbers and quite a lot of conditional logic, so nested ifs, conditional aggregation, sum if, count if, that sort of thing. A little bit of probability, right? Because again, if I go back here and I keep calculating, It's different each time, but it's never like a huge amount of money that we're earning or losing, right? It's usually pretty close to zero. So again, that reflects that we're equally likely to get a 0 or a 1, i.e. a heads or a tails. So I hope that you can use this learning exercise. Thank you very much for watching. Check the notes of this video. I'll link out to my blog post, and that'll show you the PDF that comes along with this. You can get the demo file there. And also, I've got a resource library of lots of different tools and syllabuses and all sorts of stuff for teaching data analytics. So thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time.